You got us with Fight Night Picks, as always. One half your host, Craig Allen. Twitter and Instagram, Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, respective socials, Matt Allen FNP. This weekend's main event, you can see it right there from the poster. Sergei Pavlovich taking on Curtis Blaydes, the biggest clash of styles you're going to find. Because for Pavlovich's last 5 fights, he has been an absolute destroyer. First round knockouts in all of them. And for Blaydes' last 3 fights, he's looked amazing. He's added to his boxing repertoire. He beats one Chris Giagos, and he beats Jairzinho Rosenstrike as well his last time out against Tom Aspinall. Unfortunate with the knee injury, but Blaydes was kind of popping out some of that boxing. But when you consider this matchup, Matt, I know a lot of people are going to talk about it. Pavlovich, I mean, He just continues to win, but he might struggle with the wrestling. We saw him with a takedown given up against Alistair Overeem, albeit not a Curtis Blaydes type of takedown. And Curtis Blaydes has trained with Overeem in the past, and boy, did he ever beat him badly with those elbows from the ground and pound. So when you look at a matchup like this one, I found it interesting. Pavlovich training out of ATT with a lot of high-level heavyweights that those guys have. But the stable, it's changed. He's been at the UFC PI training with Alexander Volkov, an old foe, Curtis Blaydes, and Alexei Oleinik, just a couple of tough old fellas.
This fight's like if a lion fought a great white shark. It's like, okay, I need more information, you know? Is it in the jungle? I think the shark would flop around and die pretty quick. Is it in the ocean? I don't know if lions can swim, but I'm assuming the shark would do quite well in that situation. I just think this fight is very much a contrast of styles, and I brought this up between the last 3 fights that we've had at the top of this main card because Tavares, Silva, one guy steady, one guy burns hot. Yadong Simone, you have a great striker with a lot of variety versus a very good control guy on the ground. And in this fight, Sergei Pavlovich has ungodly power in his hands. When he hits guys, they either get wobbled, well, they pretty much always get wobbled, and then he finishes them shortly after. But Curtis Blaydes is, and it's kind of wild that every single prediction, it feels like, between these guys comes down to this. Can Curtis Blaydes take down his opponent more times than they hit him in the face on the feet? Because if he can accomplish that, then he's probably going to win this fight. And for Sergei, here's the only thing that I don't love about him compared to some of the other guys who have been able to knock out Curtis Blaydes in the past. And when I say some of the other guys, you mean Derek Lewis and Francis. Those guys do throw uppercuts from what I would say better ranges. Sergei's a little bit more uptight with his boxing and he throws them from a little bit higher. So I'm not as certain if that uppercut's going to land. I think it'll be a good technique, don't get me wrong. I'm just not sure if it's going to be that one-hitter quitter that it was for those guys, that's all.
Sergei Pavlovich will set you out with that jab. He comes over with the right, and once you're hurt, he starts to pummel you with those uppercuts. And that is a huge part of his game. And if you look at it, again, 5 straight first-round finishes. Golm, then he beats a guy in Maurice Green, and then he beats Shamil Durkimov. None of those guys in the UFC. He beats Derek Lewis in a main event, and then his last time out, he beats Tai Tuivasa.
Tai came back too fast after the Gone fight. I think that's fair to say.
And he might have, but Pavlovich looked really, really good. Dropped him a couple of times in that one. The uppercuts really were the difference maker. But for Curtis Blaydes, I mean, again, debuts in 2016 and loses to Francis Ngannou. And then he goes on a win streak. And then he loses to Francis. Like, when he's taking on Francis Ngannou, he struggles. When he took on Derek Lewis, it was that big uppercut. But you look at it for Curtis Blaydes, 12-3 with a no contest in the UFC. And that's why I went with the UFC records out here. Because it's young in the game for a guy like Pavlovich, who debuted in 2018 against Alistair Overeem in Beijing, of all places. And in that fight, okay, we're at striking distance, and then Overeem closes that gap. And he's able to hold a high, almost like a tie defense, high tie defense. He gets into a plum clinch, goes trip with the back leg, and then you have Pavlovich on the ground. And then Overeem, it was almost like it took him a split second. Well, do I take advantage of this position? He did. He lands really good ground and pound, some elbows, and then Pavlovich is up against the cage, and he can't get back up to his feet. It wasn't the type of, long range, double leg, single leg type of takedown like you're going to get out of a traditional wrestler in a guy in Curtis Blaydes that trains at elevation with. Again, we touched on it. Some good heavyweights, including guys like Alistair Overeem. Now, can Overeem fight in kickboxing tomorrow? No, extenuating circumstances. But for Curtis Blaydes, it definitely is a good look to get a big guy like that can strike from 100%. Range against a guy like Pavlovich. And for Blaydes, number 1 all-time at heavyweight with an hour, 20 minutes, and 6 seconds of control time. Tied for 8 with strikes absorbed per minute, 1.7. And number 1 all-time with takedowns, 62 in the heavyweight division. Number 2 is Cain Velasquez with 32. There's a big difference between 32.
Cain's a better wrestler,
62
though, in MMA.
and 34. No.
I think he is. Like, Kane went to the UFC title and was an all-time great mainly due to his wrestling. I think he's a better MMA. I just think numbers, like, you can accumulate a lot of numbers if wrestling is at the forefront of your game. It's just, Kane was good enough at the other parts to where he didn't have to just go out there and out-wrestle guys. I still think Kane's the best heavyweight wrestler of all time. For Curtis, though, I wonder if we are going to see him prod the jab a lot in this fight, because Pavlovich will make him pay if he does make a lot of those mistakes from the long range, and Blaydes doesn't have a bad chin. I don't want people to look at some of his past stoppages and think, oh, if you hit him clean, he's going to go down. Look at the Mark Hunt fight. Look at the Rosenstrike fight. He gets hit by some clean shots. He's able to withstand them and then able to have success on the other side. The Rosenstrike fight is an interesting one, though, because Jairzinho was able to defend a lot of the initial takedowns, really most of the takedowns, and make it primarily a striking fight. Now, to Blaydes' credit, he was able to kind of out-jab and output Jairzinho in that matchup, but still, that did set a game plan to where, okay, if you're a high-level striker in the heavyweight division, he's not a success 100% of the time with his striking. You can defend some of those takedowns. So I do think for Pavlovich, if he went back and watched that Rosenstrike fight, I do think it would inspire confidence for him. I just wonder if Pavlovich could get back up to his feet if he gets taken down by Blaydes. Because if he doesn't have an answer in getting back up to his feet, maybe he can defend the takedown for 3 or 4 minutes and then kind of waste the last minute or two. But at a certain point, Blaydes is going to get a takedown with like 4 minutes left in the round. And that's going to be the most important part in this fight.
I mean, for Sergei Pavlovich, before he came into the UFC, the last decision win he had to his name was in 2017 against one Mikhail Makhnatsian, and at that time he was the Fight Nights Global Heavyweight Champ. He then beat baby Fedor Kirill Sadelnikov, a guy who was on the same card as Bobby Green on an Affliction card headlined by Fedor. But Matt, when you look at this matchup, I mean, Curtis Blaydes is slightly favored, but we always do this in the main event. We throw it on over to you guys over in the YouTube community tab, and right now, all kinds of votes, 705 of them thrown out there earlier today, 57% going with Pavlovich. Out of the comments sections, Moko saying, Ngannou didn't run from John Jones, he ran from Sergei Pavlovich. Air Dog saying, if Pavlovich can keep this on the feet, Blaydes is in trouble. Bill Cypher, Pavlovich KOs him on a failed takedown attempt. Blaydes struggles against guys with big power. Derek Lewis and Francis were both able to catch Blaydes when he was going for takedowns. And I'll go with one more, Tyler Ferreira. Fajeda, you're out there every week, Tyler. I apologize if I mispronounce your last name. Close fight, but I'll pick Blaydes. So, again, the fans going with Sergei Pavlovich. The odds with Curtis Blaydes. I mean, there are a lot of, conversations going on out there, and I really want to hear from the folks in the comment section on this one. But it's the biggest clash of styles fight that you're going to have. A first-round knockout artist, a guy that likes to take people down, and for Pavlovich, great to train with a guy like Volkov. For Blaydes, great to train with a guy like Overeem. So there is that familiarity there. But for me, I like Curtis Blaydes. I mean, to have that skill set to be able to dictate where the fight's going to take place, it's just in that close in-between where we saw Lewis and Ngannou knock him out. Can Pavlovich do that? He can. I mean, uppercuts are a primary source of his power, and that's what that's what Lewis and Ngannou were able to land. That left hand that places you, the right hand that follows it up, and if he backs Blaydes up against the cage for a panic takedown, that plays into the hand of a guy like Pavlovich. This guy has some of the best power that we've seen, period. And as the kind of joke was out there by Moko in the community tab, Ngannou ran from a guy like Pavlovich. My goodness gracious, does Pavlovich have that power? I do like Blaydes, though, with those takedowns, and that Overeem one takedown wasn't the same, but I do shade Blaydes in a matchup.
Not that MMA math matters, but if we're going to talk about the Overeem fight against Pavlovich a lot, what did Curtis do to Alistair when they fought?
Gave him a permanent scar on his forehead.
That's one of the most, that's some of the most hellacious ground and pound we've ever seen in the UFC. It was just full guard, elbow, elbow, elbow. We've always kind of wanted to see that aggressive version of Curtis Blaydes since that performance. I do have him in the matchup, but he offers a lot of opportunities to be hit by the big shot. Now, he doesn't get hit by a lot of big shots, but the big shot is available. And of course, like you've mentioned, Pavlovich has that type of power. So I do have Blaydes in the matchup, but it should be a fun one.
Matt, it is a big-time fight on the main card in the main event. I mean, Pavlovich taking on Blaydes. You made it this far. The subscribers, the flow that came in last week, we certainly appreciate it. If you've been hesitating, make sure to toss that sub, and the likes are definitely appreciated so we can beef up the video. Some great content coming out this week with Fight Night Picks. Question Mark Kicks is 2 hours before the prelims, gives us a final opportunity to look in at the weigh-ins. We did have a fighter miss weight last weekend, so we'll see how that affects the fighters coming up this week. Also to note, small cage at the UFC's Apex. We'll see whose hand that plays into in this matchup and the others as well. Really appreciate the support from those Fight Night Picks faithful. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.